Let's talk about D&D. Let's talk about balanced parties in D&D. And let's answer the question, the D&D Balanced Party, is it necessary? First, we should probably answer the question, what even is a balanced party and how does that work in Dungeons & Dragons 5e? Let's get to all that and more on today's DnDaily 299, y'all. Today the vlog, it's 299. That means tomorrow is another major milestone for the DnDaily vlog here, as we're gonna hit 300 episodes, sessions, vlogs, whatever we're gonna call them here on 1 in 20 D&D. Thank you for being along for this amazing and challenging and fun ride. Hey, let's talk about the balanced party. The balanced party is something that is thrown around from time to time in the gaming arena, whether you're playing online video games like MMORPGs or whether you're playing games at the tabletop like Dungeons & Dragons. And this is not something new. In fact, this concept has pretty much been floated around for as long as I can remember, at least for as long as I have been playing D&D. So let's just say that if you are familiar with MMORPGs, you're probably going to be familiar with many of the terms I'm about to use. I want to sort of hone in on what is a balanced party first, and then we'll kind of ask the question of, do you really need to have a balanced party? Now, what is a balanced party going to look like? Generally speaking, it's pretty well assumed that there's going to be 4 parts to a balanced party. Those are as follows. The first one is going to be generally referred to as your tank. A tank is more or less your frontline melee fighter. That's, again, doesn't have to be the case. However, this is generally going to be who is referred to as the tank. The frontline defender, the person who is going to, let's say, be the infantry of the group. They're gonna get in everyone's face. They're gonna try to, we would say in, of course, MMORPGs, we say like draw aggro or get the attention of the bad guys and so forth. Now, that being said, it doesn't really matter what class a person is. For instance, a barbarian is going to be just as effective and functional as a tank, as a paladin, or a fighter, or a monk, for that matter. In fact, pretty much any class, with maybe one exception or two, could be a tank. But generally speaking, it's going to be your heavily armed or very defensive characters, like for instance the barbarian, which can just soak tons of damage. That's going to be the tank, right? That's sort of the core of the balanced party. The next person that's involved in a balanced party is going to be what in 4e, 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, was referred to as the striker. A lot of times in like games like World of Warcraft and such, they're usually referred to as DPS, or damage per second, because in a video game, that's how the stats are sort of measured. Well, in Dungeons & Dragons, what we're talking about is like a fast attacker, or someone who can basically put down a lot of hurt in one attack. So this could be a mage, it could be a ranger, it could be a rogue, any of one of the classes. For that matter, it could be, again, any class. The class isn't important. The role is more important. The way the person, plays the character is more important. And their ability to dish out like huge amounts of damage in, let's say, a single round of combat. So in that regard, it very well could be a monk, because monks, if they're hitting consistently and putting a consistent amount of damage out, that's going to bring down the opponents pretty quickly. Usually, a lot of times we would think of a rogue as being this kind of the striker or the DPS or whatever term we want to use for this part of the roles. rogues are fantastic because they get sneak attack, right? So they can come in and in one hit at very low levels put out an enormous amount of damage, and it just keeps going up and up as they increase in levels. Obviously, wizards, sorcerers, and even warlocks can fall into this category depending on which spells they use in which combination and how well, of course, they hit with those spells. Because yeah, if you just keep rolling ones, it doesn't matter what you can put out on the end of damage because you're not doing any damage. So that's probably pretty obvious. All right, the third one is probably also pretty obvious, and in 5e D&D, I've talked about this recently, in 5e D&D, the healer role it's not as important as it used to be. However, something to keep in mind, especially when we're talking about a balanced party, is the long-term campaign. When you're playing a more longer-term, drawn-out campaign, healers are really even more important because healers are going to have access to spells like restoration, like lesser and greater restoration, which if you get paralyzed, poisoned, diseased, and so forth, petrified, this is one of the most critical spells in the game on some level. Does it come up all the time? No, but certainly it comes up frequently enough in a long-term campaign that you're gonna wish somebody in the party has a restoration spell. Similarly, the healer has an important role because if someone goes down during the middle of combat, if you can't get them back up, it's really easy to fall in the downward spiral that can happen where the tides flip real fast against the players. See, if you don't have a healer in the party, or this is what I'm going to get to this a little later in this video, if you don't have a healer in the party or access to potions of healing, your party can be in real big trouble real fast. So combat becomes more critical when there is not someone in the party or even multiple characters in the party that can bring people back from unconscious with some healing magic. So healing is the third part of that balanced party. The fourth, I'm gonna break into two pieces because they could be in a 5-person party, 2 roles, or they could sort of be combined into one. And that is the utility or the crowd control member of the party. Well, crowd control, what the heck is that? Well, again, back to the MMORPGs and things like that. Crowd control is the player who is able to do a bunch of damage to multiple targets and thereby like dealing with minions and weaker, opponents and that sort of thing. Or they're able to lock down bigger threats. For instance, someone who is a crowd control person might be really skilled with things like hold person or hold monster and so forth, or even things that manipulate the battlefield like erupting earth or grasping vines and these kind of spells, right? Anything that will manipulate the battlefield or again, really control your opponents and their ability to devastate your own party. So locking down single combatants or dealing with multiple combatants all at once. These are the great things that a controller, a controller or a crowd control. A controller is usually the term for the role. So that's kind of what they can do. They also can be like a bard or someone like this who has even a cleric can be a great controller / utility character because things like buffs, like Bless or maybe Sanctuary and some of these other similar spells, they can be a huge help to the party overall. So this fourth and fifth role, again, depending on how many members of the party there are, it sort of has a broad perspective or a broad spectrum of how an individual character is going to come at this role. So as a recap, let me go back through this real quick as a recap. So A balanced party, if there are 4 members, is going to have a tank, a striker, a healer, again, loosely, and a controller, right? Those are the 4 main balanced party elements. You can break down controller into crowd control and utility if you want. And so we could go more into, and maybe I will, let me know, actually, please contradict me, correct me, share your thoughts any time on any of these videos. So if you want to go more in depth into these 4, I'd be happy to do that. But let's ask this ultimate question that I posed at the beginning. Is a balanced party even necessary? Do you have to make sure you have a balanced party? I would argue that no, in fact, you actually don't. Balanced parties are great. They can be great, and sure, it will make things a little easier. However, if you're playing 5e Dungeons and Dragons and you're playing in sort of a bog standard, like run-of-the-mill, general generic campaign, chances are, at the very least, you're going to have access to potions of healing. And if you have access to potions of healing, and perhaps even greater and superior potions of healing, those can come in handy to sort of replace the healer, right? You don't have to have a specific healer that is their job all of the time. And with the way 5e is currently situated, with multiple classes and even some of the races having available healing abilities, it can get spread between 2 or 3 or even the entire party. And here's another way to look at this. It's possible that you could conceivably play a game with an entire party full of clerics or monks or any other class for that matter. In fact, Matthew Colville is working on Kingdoms and Warfare, and there are going to be rules in that help us as DMs if we want to create a game and run a game, or even if players come to us where they say, hey, let's play a game where we're all monks, or let's play a game where we're all rogues, or what have you. So there are definitely ways to handle that. You could do homebrew rules, you could have magic items, you know, a staff of healing or something like this. You can hand out lots of potions, and so there are plenty of ways to run around that. The other roles as well, you don't necessarily have to have a dedicated tank. There doesn't have to be someone who is a tin can with like ridiculous armor and is able to soak up lots of damage, because if you have a few different characters that are comfortable getting into melee, then that can be just as effective. Same thing for your controller and your striker and so forth. Each one of these roles could be handled by more than one player. And depending on the makeup of your party, any good DM, in my opinion, is going to be able to tailor it to the game you're playing at your table. So ultimately, no. I am of the opinion that a balanced party is not necessary. It may be helpful, especially in long-term campaigns. Even in one-shots it can be helpful. However, it is absolutely not necessary. Just make sure you talk with the other players at the table and you talk with the DM and work it out ahead of time. That will help you to navigate the challenges that we all face when we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Those are my thoughts. I would love to hear yours, whether they contradict me, corroborate what I'm saying, or anything else in between. I'll see you tomorrow. Keep rolling 20s. Check out this video right here. And remember, it's your game. Play your way.